I learned something. I hope I learned something. I hope I learned something from the story he sees, from the brightest days, from the darkest nights, from the sunny days. Something. I hope you learn something. I hope you learn something from the stormy seas, from the brightest days, from the darkest nights, from the sunny
Howdy. Welcome to the daily All Hat No Cattle News Rodeo. I'm your host, Hats. Welcome to D-Live, Trovo, Twitch, and YouTube. Not necessarily in that order, of course. Happy to have you all here. Bit of a different style show today, since it is technically a holiday again, a 3-day weekend, with yesterday being the glorious 245th, I believe, anniversary of the Declaration of Independence being signed. Technically, though, that was July 3rd. The 4th was the day it was announced. But I believe it was, I think it was Madison who had initially proclaimed that July 3rd would be the day of great festivities, etc., and it slowly switched over to the 4th, or did so quickly. I honestly don't remember now. That part of my brain is gone forever, I guess. But have a slightly different show today. It's going to all be on all 4 channels. I'm not going to switch off YouTube halfway through like I normally do. So we'll do that. I have a number of things for you. First of all, of course, the Babylon Bee bookends. It would not be a news rodeo without them. I have a very abbreviated update on the market today, since the stock market itself is closed. due to the holiday, but we do have some futures trading to look at, including a very interesting spike in oil prices. I'll talk about why that is. We have some political news, including the latest, oh my God, he's losing at Biden moment. Something there that you need to see and you will cringe at significantly. The National Educators Association, the NEA, the largest teachers union in the U.S., has said that it is going to teach critical race theory in all 50 states, in all some 15,000 schools. It is a part of, or is it 1,500? I forget now. There's an order of magnitude in there somewhere. And I'll have an interesting comparison to that news versus what we've been told over the last few weeks. Kind of a funny comparison there. Some law and order stuff, including a horrible story of a Russian language Jewish rabbi who was almost stabbed to death in Boston last week, stabbed 8 times by an illegal Egyptian alien who had overstayed his student visa. The man has a history of violent acts, it seems. And also, San Jose, California, has voted on unanimously a couple of ordinances to require gun owners in San Jose to pay a fee to the city for owning a gun, and also they have to carry liability insurance. And we'll talk about whether or not that will even come close to being determined as constitutional. Now, I have to tease this. After the second news rodeo, I have a separate piece. It's a 7+ minute long opinion monologue from Sky News Australia. It's from back in March, but it's very timely, especially after what I show you, what I'm showing you early on here. It's regarding Biden and the whole weekend at Bernie's / weekend at Biden's charade that we've got going on right now. I have to include it, first of all, because it has a commercial that I had never seen before from back in the 2020 campaign. That is absolutely hilarious. I didn't even know it existed. So you have to see that. But I'll have that at the end of the show in case you don't hang out for the whole thing. But I have watched the first bit of it, and it is quite something. It is what the press here in the U.S. should be doing. And again, this is from March, from Sky News Australia. Real quickly, Sky News Australia, that's pretty much now the Fox News of Australia. They used to be real mainstream. They were on all of the metro stations that had TV screens. All of them had Sky News. And over time, Sky News became more and more conservative, and they got kicked out of all of those areas, the airports, the metro stations. I don't know what they've been replaced with, though, but I remember that when I was doing a lot of Australian news back during my early YouTube days. But so hopefully you'll stick around for it, because it really is something special. All right, then, let us get into it. First off, our first Babylon Bee bookend. This is the one on the left from their U.S. section. Journalists facing slow news day as Biden has not eaten ice cream yet. Dateline United States. Journalists across the country are struggling to fill broadcast time in newspaper space today. According to sources, there's almost nothing interesting or important to cover in the news since Biden hasn't eaten an ice cream cone yet. Ugh, why is this so hard? Said Washington Post correspondent Seth Rowe McBubbles as he banged his head against the keyboard. Crime wave in Chicago? Meh. Crackdown in Hong Kong? Boring. Oh, why can't President Biden go get another chocolate chip waffle cone? Now that would be newsworthy. I hate slow news days. Close quote. According to sources, McBubbles was torn between filling space with coverage of a local story where a rabid squirrel disrupted a pie eating contest or starting an investigation into why tube socks are so racist. His thoughts were interrupted by a blaring siren and red light in the newsroom indicating breaking news. Biden's making a stop at Dairy Queen. We need someone on site to find out what flavor he ordered. Yes, here we go, said McBubbles while grabbing his equipment and running out the door as fast as he could. I love my job. Babylon Bee, everyone, showing us where the sensibilities of the modern American news media are at this point in time. That's what CRT should stand for, JF, cathode ray tube. I would love to defund the NEA Thumper, but unfortunately they are self-funded. They make their members pay. And what we need to do is create a kind of environment like we did here in Wisconsin, where the teachers' unions no longer have the power that they used to. That got Governor Scott Walker a recall effort. It failed miserably, but still, that kind of thing it'll get you. But he saved he saved our states. I almost said country. He saved our state's economy because the unfunded liabilities for teachers' pensions were going to break this state in half, and he cut them off at the knees. Took a lot of flack for it, but it worked. It worked. Oh, Thumper says he was trying to imitate the losers. I gotcha. Good for you. You know, once again, if someone can misread the chat, it's this guy right here. I always miss the subtleties. Thank you for correcting me. Moving right along. So as I said, the market itself is closed today, so we do have some futures trading to look at, though. Gold was up almost 0.25%. It's still below 1,800 an ounce, so not doing well. Bitcoin is flailing around today. At one point, it was up around 36,000 last night, about 9 p.m. Eastern time, and it fell off the cliff, and it's been struggling to get back up. Right now, it's at 34,145 and change per coin. The big winner of the day, though, is crude oil. You can see the graph right here. It was fairly steady, a slight climb up to just around $75.50 per barrel of West Texas Intermediate sweet crude. And then there was a big spike, and it went up to almost $76 and continued to climb until now it is sitting at $76.31 per barrel. That sharp climb is because OPEC Plus had a meeting today, and they did not reach any conclusions on increasing output. So that means supply is still static, and as demand is going up, supply and demand, that means prices are going up. So folks, watch for your gas to become even more expensive, as again it is now over $76.25 per barrel. So enjoy the $3 a gallon gas prices while you can, because they may not last, and I don't mean that in a good way. So as I said, we have a new Biden moment to look at. This is from this morning. I didn't hear about this, but there may have been another Russian hack. There was a company, I'm not even sure what they do, but there's a report of a hack, and Biden was asked a question about it while he was making a stop at some cute little country store somewhere in a place I don't care about. I believe it was Traverse City, Michigan. I'm not sure, but I believe it was Traverse City. Beautiful city, by the way. Very expensive to live there. But a beautiful city. But so a reporter asked Biden about the Russian hack. Now, first off, they asked permission to ask the question. And when Biden says yes, the rest of the place laughs, showing just how completely cuckolded American media is. Once they get permission and they ask again, then they go ahead, and Biden interrupts, interrupts the premise, because the reporter asks, is this a Russian hack? What are we doing? And Biden says, we don't know if it's a Russian hack yet. And then he starts to try to answer the question to the best of his knowledge as to what's happening at the moment. And he can't. He can't answer it. He reaches in his pocket, pulls out one of those note cards that he always has. At least this time, it was just one note card, not a series of them. And he tries to read from it, and all he gets from it is, we don't know if it's a Russian hack yet, and we've dispatched all of our resources out to help them in case it is. He had to go to a note card for that. And then after the note card, he stumbles and fumbles for another 25, 30 seconds, saying absolutely nothing intelligible. And he actually says, I was just briefed about this on the plane. That's why I was late getting off the plane. I just was told about this. So it's fresh. It just happened. and he still has to go to a note card for it. Compare and contrast that to Trump's speech Saturday, which many of you were here for. I've got almost 200 views on it on the YouTube channel right now. People who have been able to find it and watch it. It's very difficult to find, by the way, especially if you search through YouTube's search engine. But Trump didn't have, a teleprompter. He didn't have any notes, and he just pop, 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 pop. Every stat, boom, it was right there. So compare and contrast, folks. Here we go. Oh, by the way, there's going to be a couple pauses in the video. That's not us. It's from the recording itself. Okay, here we go. Oh wait, let me get the sound up. Just a second. I wish there was a way I could preload the sound and switch it more easily than having to go into the properties. But if I have it up high, then when I play the music, then it blasts everybody out that way. So here we go.
I'll be in better shape.
Oh, here we go.
Mr. President, let me know if I can ask you a question.
Sure.
Right now, sir?
Yeah.
With the most recent hack by the Russians, would you say that this means
We're
that...
not sure it's the Russians.
Okay, with
I
this most...
I got a brief as I was on the plane. That's why it was late getting off the plane. I got a brief and
Right.
all right.
Would you like your
Do we
receipt?
know who it might be, sir?
I'll be in better shape to talk to you about it. Hang on a second.
We need to have. We're not gonna do it.
I'll tell you what they sent me. Okay. The idea. First of all, we're not sure who it is for certain, number one. And what I did, I directed the full resources of the government to assist in a response if we determine. What else you need?
Oh, nothing. You're all set.
Okay. And the fact is that I directed the intelligence community to give me a deep dive on what's happened, and I'll know better tomorrow. And if it is either with the knowledge of and or a consequence of Russia, then I told Putin we will respond. And
You didn't tell him already, sir?
no, I haven't called because we're not certain. The initial thinking was it was not the Russian government, but we're not sure yet. So.
Mr. President, let me know if I can ask you a question.
Your president, everyone. Anyway, again, big piece on Biden at the end of the show after the second Babylon Bee bookend. So hopefully you'll be able to hang out for it. I've got to fix the formatting again on OBS. It was the framing was quite off that time. I'll let me do something here real quickly. Hang on just a second. There we go. That's better. All right, let's try it that way. All right, moving right along. So, short story, but important story. This is from justthenews.com by John Solomon himself. Turns out there were some things that were left over from the NAFTA treaty after the USMCA had been finalized. They were known as legacy packs. And under that claim, the owner of the Keystone XL pipeline is suing Biden, this administration at least, 46 asterisk, and his crew for $15 billion in damages. Billion with a B, folks. $15 billion. Energy company TC Energy Corp said it filed a notice of intent Friday to seek damages under the USMCA agreement under a legacy clause involving the prior NAFTA trade pact. TC Energy the company said, will be seeking to recover more than $15 billion in damages that it has suffered as a result of the U.S. government's breach of its NAFTA obligations. So we'll have to keep an eye on that. Another instance of 46 asterisk being taken to court over his incredibly extrajudicial and extra-constitutional actions. And face it, folks, there's going to be quite a few more to follow. Guarantee it. So, as we were talking about a moment ago, the National Education Association, I think I said educators earlier, I apologize, it's Education Association. The NEA had its annual representative assembly over the weekend. It was virtual this time because, of course, the teachers haven't had the opportunity to be vaccinated, which is, of course, ridiculous because they were pretty much in front of the line in almost every state, especially where they have the largest union contracts. And even if they didn't get preferential treatment, there are more than enough opportunities for anyone in America to get vaccinated right now. There are places people sitting on their hands waiting for people showing up. Doses are being wasted because once you take them out of cold storage, they can only withstand slightly less cold refrigeration for a period of time, and then they have to be tossed. And you can't inject something that's at negative 30 degrees Fahrenheit into someone's arm. You have to let it warm up a little bit. So that's what's happening. Excuse me just a moment. Is that necessary?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Well, I don't know that USMCA included Keystone, JF, but it does seem that NAFTA covered it because that was Keystone XL was initially proposed under NAFTA, and according to what I read there, it looks like there is a legacy clause for items that were under the aegis of NAFTA that were carried over under USMCA. That's the way I'm reading it. But yeah, the NEA says we're going to teach critical race theory everywhere in all 50 states and in all the 14,000 school districts we work with. Okay. They're also going to commit about $150,000 to promoting this. They're also planning on creating groups, quote unquote, with resources available to all who need them to counteract anti-CRT organizations. So they're actually creating their own attack groups against people who are rightly against CRT. We've seen rumblings of that, say like in Loudoun County, Virginia, where there was a social media group that was penetrated by an outsider of teachers in Loudoun County who were trying to dox and otherwise target prominent critics of CRT from the school board meetings. They wanted to go after them personally. And so now the NEA is saying the quiet part out loud. It's going to do that actively. But that's kind of neither here nor there. A number of states, including Idaho and Iowa, have passed laws that ban CRT from any public schools in their, actually from any schools, I believe, in their states, certainly public schools. So the NEA's got a real tough row to hoe in that regard. But the best part is they're saying out loud, we're going to teach CRT. What have we been hearing for the last couple weeks now as the anti-critical theory? I mean, let's just face it. Critical theory is not just race theory. There's critical all kinds of theory. But people have been saying there is no critical race theory in these schools, which is, of course, a lie. But what they're doing is they're saying we're not teaching the actual theory from the law school aegis of critical race theory. We're teaching under that, and so what they're doing is they're teaching critical theory, but they're just weaving it into all of the different curricula. They're not teaching CRT as a separate subject, but they're using the basis of it for all the other classes, for math, for history, for English even, all of them. They're weaving that into it. That's what they're really doing. But NEA comes out and says, we're going to teach CRT. Now, this is an article from the Daily Wire by Chrissy Clark. Chrissy's kind of new. I haven't seen her that often. But I'm going to follow this up with another Daily Wire article from just a couple weeks ago by Ben Johnson. And it's quite simple. It's titled, Here are 5 Ways the Media is Trying to Mislead You on Critical Race Theory. And first off is, it doesn't exist. We've heard that. Terry McAuliffe, former governor of Virginia, and now a Democrat candidate to take the seat again, he has called CRT another right-wing conspiracy. And he went on to say, quote, this is totally made up by Donald Trump and Virginia Republican gubernatorial candidate Glenn Youngkin. This is who they are. It's a conspiracy theory. And Chuck Todd, back on June 20th, said, quote, it's manufactured and then sort of seems to have been lit. The fire was lit. And there are other things, you know, how if you don't allow CRT to be taught, no one will learn about slavery, which is of course a complete lie. And then the other, CRT exists but only in law schools, that I just discussed a second ago. The backlash is not grassroots. It's being led by national conservative organizations. And it's, of course, partially true. There are national organizations that are providing resources to local groups to help them fight CRT in their school districts. That is a thing. So they're only half right there. And, of course, they're lying significantly about anti-CRT activist Christopher Rufo being the main nemesis of these people. He's from the Manhattan Institute. Christopher Rufo has been doing great work on this. He really is the one who blew the lid off it. And he has become the go-to guy for anti-CRT resources and research. And the Washington Post ran an article on him back on June 19th. And it was absolutely afactual. Nothing but lie after. I called him a far-right extremist, and lie after lie. And they actually retracted it 2 days later. It was so bad. For the Washington Post to retract, not stealth edit, but retract an article shows you just how bad it was. But yeah, we're being told it doesn't exist, and the NEA says, "Oh yeah, we're going to do it. We're going to teach it. We're teaching it. Absolutely. They're talking about bringing Howard Zinn, his history of America, completely false and anti-American history of America. They're talking about bringing his stuff more to the forefront as well. So once again, they can't stay on topic. They can't stay on narrative. They go one way, they get called out, they gaslight, go back and pretend that's what they've been saying all along, and then someone else comes out and blows that out of the water. So it's pretty hilarious. If I were Don Lemon and Chuck Todd right now, I'd be really, really hacked off at the NEA. I think McAuliffe should be as well. And good afternoon, Twin Crier. Nice to see you, of course. All right, moving right along. So, there is good news. Not only is CRT being outright banned in a number of states, but public school enrollment is dropping dramatically. Not so much in high school. That's only down a few tenths of a percent. But preschool and kindergarten are massively down. And grade school is down quite a bit as well. Some states more than others. A few states saw very little reduction in attendance, in enrollment, since almost all the states were virtual learning last year. Those that did not go virtual saw the least drop in numbers. Sorry, fewest drop in numbers. But this is a fascinating piece here. This is from the Center Square staff from justthenews.com. The 3% drop represents some 1.5 million students. There were 51.1 million students enrolled in conventional and public charter schools during the 2019-2020 academic year. Preschool enrollment fell by 22%, and preschool and kindergarten enrollment combined dropped 13%. High school enrollment fell by 0.4%. Some 29 states experienced enrollment declines of between 1% and 3%. Washington, D.C., Utah, South Dakota, the U.S. Virgin Islands, and American Samoa saw decreases of less than 1%. Vermont, Mississippi, and Puerto Rico all saw enrollment fall by more than 5%, while Washington, New Mexico, Michigan, Kentucky, and Maine lost between 4 and 5% of enrollment. Here's the best part. Homeschooling, meanwhile, more than doubled between the end of the 2019-2020 school year and the start of 2020 to 2021. According to the Census Bureau, 5.4% of American households said they were homeschooling their children in the spring of 2020. By October, that figure reached 11.1%. According to the Census Bureau, quote, "It's clear that in an unprecedented environment, families are seeking solutions that will reliably meet their health and safety needs, their childcare needs, and the learning and socio-emotional needs of their children." So the teachers are just doing all they can to make themselves vestigial. I predict a big explosion in the pod learning systems that were coming out here and there last year during the school shutdowns, and we saw more of them earlier this year as the school shutdowns continued. And I heard last week that the NEA and I think the AFT are both saying that all children have to be vaccinated by fall of 2020 or they're not going back to school. I saw that. I don't know if they're still saying that or not, but that is a thing at the moment. That is a thing. So that's going to be a whole new reason to not send your kids to public school. Now, I understand that homeschooling is not an option for a lot of families, but pod learning is. In case you're not familiar, pod learning is where you get one or more teachers together and they teach a small group of kids. That could be in someone's home. It could be in a rented area somewhere, an unused room in a rec center, something like that. There can be systems available for childcare, for aftercare. If parents can't pick up their kids right after the end of the classrooms, they can hold on to the kids with qualified childcare workers, things like that. Those are really becoming popular. I have considered actually, except the brain damage makes it impossible. But last year, I was really considering trying to join one of those systems as either a history teacher or an English teacher. I really would have loved to have done that, but I just don't think I have the mental faculties capable of properly teaching children anymore. My vocabulary switches up so much. It's hard for me to use the right words at the right time, and that really, really confuses kids. So I don't think I would be a good fit. But I was very much interested in it not too long ago. But so big numbers there, very big numbers. And again, it's only picking up steam. If the NEA and the AFT don't back off from this demand that everybody be vaccinated before fall, this 13-14%, it's going to seem like a drop in the bucket compared to what's coming, especially with the pushback we're seeing on young kids getting vaccinated. I mean, that is really, really going to create a big, big ball of friction. So we'll see what happens there. Okay, so of course yesterday was the 4th of July, and we can't be happy we live in America anymore. America is based on slavery. The skyscrapers are made out of cotton. This is stolen land, yada, 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 because we all know that the colonists and later immigrants to America are the only people in the history of the earth to have ever owned slaves or to have ever colonized land that was previously inhabited by someone else. We all know that none of the Indian tribes who lived in America had slaves. That never happened. We know that they never had like cannibalism or would wholesale murder other people from other tribes in major wars, that they would never take over lands previously inhabited by a different tribe. None of that ever happened in America before we showed up. Certainly not in the Caribbean. Certainly not. Certainly, the Muslims never, ever dealt in the slave trade back in northern Africa. That never happened, even though more whites have been victims of slavery than African blacks here in the United States. Remember, we fought a multi-year war with the Barbary pirates back at the beginning of this country because they were constantly taking over our ships in the Mediterranean and capturing the crews and selling them into slavery, if not outright murdering them. And of course, the Turks have a very long history of enslaving Serbs. The word slave comes from the word Slav, because the Turkish made a big habit out of enslaving Slavic peoples, especially the Serbians, kidnapping their children, forcing them to become Muslims, selling the children into slavery, and then later on using the children as cannon fodder for further invasions into the Caucasus. But we're supposed to believe that only Americans ever did any of this. Only Americans have the original sin of slavery upon them. Funny thing is, only America is the country that had a multi-year war in which hundreds of thousands of people died in order to stop slavery. We actually fought to end it. But that, I guess, didn't really happen according to people like Cori Bush. Cori Bush, you may remember, she is a proud BLM member. She was elected to Congress out of Missouri back in 2018. And she is a complete and utter nut job. She is, without a doubt, one of the most horrible people in Congress. And that's saying a lot. So over the weekend, Cori decided that it would be a good idea to completely trash America on the 4th of July. And normally I don't give these people the time of day, but this is a little different. So this is about a tweet from Cori Bush. Quote, "When they say that the 4th of July is about American freedom, remember this. The freedom they're referring to is for white people. This land is stolen land and black people still aren't free." So there was, of course, a lot of pushback, very articulate, very well put, including Daryl B. Harrison, who's a podcast host, who also happens to be black, by the way. He said the following: "Cori Bush is an angry black woman, a very angry black woman. Her anger is eating her alive from the inside out. I pity her because the, quote, freedom she seeks is not the freedom she needs. As such, freedom will continue to evade her as long as she carries that anger within her heart." Leo Terrell, remember folks, Leo Terrell, up until very recently, was a massive lefty. I mean, he would come on Sean Hannity and rip his microphone off when Hannity wouldn't let him get away with his, pardon me, my shoulder's itching like mad. I realize that's very unprofessional, but it's just, I gotta get some cortisone on this after I'm done. But Leo Terrell would rip his microphone off when Hannity wouldn't let him get away with his talking points. And Terrell would constantly try to shout down Hannity, things like that. And then Joe Biden appeared on Charlemagne the God on the Breakfast Club and uttered the famous words, "Well, if you have a hard time figuring out whether or not you're for Trump or me, then you ain't black." The light bulb went on over Leo Terrell's head, and he realized that he was part of the party of racists. Especially because they're the ones who were promoting this absolute sack of crap known as Joe Biden. And he became a fervent conservative. And remember, no one is as strongly behind the cause as a convert. You'll never meet anyone who is more anti-cigarette than former smokers, for instance. I mean, the joke has gone so far that Leo Terrell, when he does hits on Fox sometimes, he wears a hat that from a name that Sean Hannity gave him. It says Leo Terrell 2.0. That's how they refer to him. It's hilarious, but it's great. So Leo Terrell responded with the following: "Do not respond to this idiot. She just wants attention. She hates herself!" 3 exclamation points. My favorite take on it, I should say, though, is from Kimberly Klacik, the former candidate for U.S. Congress out of Baltimore. She did lose that seat. It's a heavily blue district, but she did pretty well, and she really paved the way for a lot of black Republicans. Unfortunately, she got zero support from the Republican National Committee because it's such a blue district. They didn't want to, quote, waste any money in it. And the RNC has a real bad habit of doing that, of denying black Republicans any type of air just because they're in such heavily blue districts, when in fact, that's exactly where the money needs to go to promote Republicanism, to promote conservatism more broadly in these communities. And then they will become less and less blue. Very short-sighted of the RNC, and I've always had a problem with them because of that. I think that Ronna McDaniels, is that her last name, McDaniel? That was her biggest fault, I think, from the 2020 election, in my opinion. But there was another tweet that caught my eye. It's a person named Thomas Chatterton Williams. I do not know who Thomas Chatterton Williams is, but he tweeted the following: "Another thought, who is the they in this construction? The implication is that black people, and presumably other non-whites, uniformly feel alienated from such notions of freedom. This would shock Ralph Ellison, Albert Murray, Stanley Crouch, and countless anonymous others." Now I read that, and I got hit in the head with a sledgehammer. Ralph Ellison. Ralph Ellison wrote The Invisible Man, one of the great suspense novels of all time. And also science fiction. Just one of the absolute best. I get chills just thinking about it. It's been made into numerous movies, many times, with different actors, different takes on it. In fact, I think, wasn't there one where the Invisible Man was actually a woman? I don't remember now. But here's the thing. Here's a picture of Ralph Ellison. Ralph Ellison's black. I didn't know that. I did not know that. It never occurred to me one way or the other. I just loved the book, loved some of the movies, and boom, there you go. Ralph Ellison, black man. But blacks aren't free in America, folks. They just write and are lauded as some of the greatest authors of their time. So there's that. There's that. New word to the wise. So moving on with some news about Biden nominations. They've all been horrible. Every Biden nominee has been so bad that I've avoided covering them because they always have some kind of a history as racists or virulent anti-Trumpers or any other number of things. It's so invasive, so pervasive that I just didn't bother covering them anymore because it was all the same thing. This person is unqualified because they're a diversity hire. This person is unqualified because of their views on race, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But they're getting through anyway because senators like Susan Collins and Lisa Murkowski will vote for them. Now, even if they didn't vote for them, the Democrats still have half the Senate, and Harris cast the tiebreaker vote, I should say. So even if the Republicans don't vote at all, if all the Democrats vote, the nominee goes through. And that's pretty much been the case. The only nominee that hasn't made it to a floor vote and gotten through so far is Neera Tanden. Remember, Neera was tapped to be the head of the of OMB, Office of Management and Budget, in the White House. But she had some really, really insane tweets about Republicans and senators of both parties that came back to bite her in the butt. And there were a couple of Democrat senators who refused to vote for her. So she never made it. But the biggest nominee on the block right now is David Chipman, who's been picked by 46 asterisk to head the ATF. Now, the ATF hasn't had a full confirmed director in years. It's been acting directors for quite some time, going back as far as the Obama administration. But David Chipman's been tapped to lead it. Now, we've covered him before. He's a virulent anti-gunner. He's been on the boards in very high positions of both Everytown for Gun Safety and the Gifford outfit. Both are massively anti-gun. He has basically said that AR-15s need to be banned or at least become NFA weapons, National Firearms Act, which means you have to pass rigorous background checks, including law enforcement background checks. They have to be fingerprinted and have to pay $200 to the federal government in order to wait a year before you can take delivery of it. Now remember, anytime you buy an NFA item, I don't care if it's a short barrel rifle, a suppressor, whatever, you have to buy it first and then wait to find out if you'll be approved to own it, because they have to have the serial number. These things are registered directly to you, and you can't sell them unless you go through this process all over again with the next guy. Very difficult to transfer an NFA item. He's also said that new gun owners should take their guns, hide them behind, unloaded, locked, and hide them behind the cans of beans and potted meat that they're holding, because he thinks anyone who buys a gun is a prepper. And he says they shouldn't pull them out until the zombies come. And this is the guy that Biden thinks should be the head of the ATF. Well, he's not doing so well among moderate Democrat senators right now. There are a couple who are acknowledging flat out that this guy's iffy, including Joe Manchin, who's a Democrat from West Virginia. And John Tester, who's a Democrat out of, where is it? Montana, I believe. He is also on the fence, and not in a good way, about Chipman. Also, who have been Democrats who haven't taken a public stance on Chipman, not only Manchin, also Sinema out of Arizona, Maggie Hassan from New Hampshire, and Angus King, who's an independent out of Maine. Manchin was asked about Chipman's nomination last month and acknowledged that, quote, "There's a lot of controversy. I really am undecided." So this would be a big blow. 246 asterisk. Article from Fox News, by the way, by Tyler Olson. So we'll keep an eye on this. We'll keep an eye on this. So someone who David Chipman believes should have their rights severely regulated is a U.S. Congresswoman by the name of Nancy Mace. She's a South Carolina Republican. And not too long ago, her house was defaced with spray paint, Antifa symbols, and FU, things like that. She has kids. They weren't home at the time. But she didn't even know it had happened, but someone had called the police. And the police called her and said, "Do you know what happened to your house?" So it's all been cleaned up. Now, Mace was a gun owner before. And she had received some threats when she first was elected. And now she has gone to the point where she not only has her concealed carry certificate in South Carolina, but she carries all the time. And she's being very open about it. She says in this article from Fox News by Matt Leach that she goes to the range at least once a week. And she says, wherever I'm allowed to, I have my gun. I think every person in America who's legally allowed to own a gun should do exactly that. Ladies, there are ways to carry a pistol that do not require having a bulky holster on your hip. There are really, really good concealment purses out there. There are also very, very good shoulder harnesses that would fit nicely underneath any type of a sporty jacket or vest. You can dress up and have a gun. No trouble at all. There are a lot of smaller pistols that are easily manageable for smaller framed ladies. 38 specials are easy to fire. I would not ever recommend a very short barrel or a very light framed handgun though, because the lighter the frame, the worse the recoil. And even a 38 special in a light framed pistol can really hurt you. It's so uncomfortable to fire you won't practice with it. And it's the exact opposite thing you want in a firearm. But there are ways to do it. You can go ahead and do a little internet researching. Just say, concealed carry women, and boom, you will find all you need to find. And good afternoon, dog. Nice to see you. Nice to see you. All right, moving right along. So as I teased at the beginning, there was a stabbing in Boston last week, and there was a rabbi. He was out in front of his shul. There was a summer camp going on with about 100 kids inside at the moment, and a man walked up to him, and he thought he was getting carjacked. So he offers the guy the keys. The guy refuses, forces him in the car, and then he gets out, and the guy chases him down the street and grabs him and starts stabbing him. Stabbed him 8 times in the extremities. 8 times. Somehow, this man did not die. I have no idea. Stab wounds are notoriously lethal. So 8 stab wounds. Maybe it was a small knife. I don't know. Haven't heard about that yet. But the attacker has been arrested. His name is Khalid Awad. And Khalid was here on a student visa from Egypt. And he overstayed his visa. It was revoked a couple months ago. Funny thing is, though, he's wanted in Florida right now on battery and robbery charges. But his visa was still good until recently, until it timed out. I find that fascinating. I'd like to know more about that. Now, since he tried to kill someone, Khalid meets the requirements set by our idiot leader for deportation because it's an aggravated felony. This is what you have to do to get deported now. You have to try to kill someone. Basically, that's it. You have to try to kill someone, then you get deported. As opposed to you're here illegally, you should get deported, period. This could have been a number one of those gold star crimes that Trump was so famous for highlighting. Families who, children were lost due to homicides by illegal aliens, be it weapons or drunk driving, things like that. I know technically a car is a weapon, but you understand what I'm saying. So this guy's 24 years old, and he initially pulled a gun, I apologize, on Rabbi Shlomo Naginsky. He demanded Naginsky's car keys, and Naginsky said no, ran away, and Awad grabbed him in a park nearby. Naginsky was thinking, I've got to get this guy away from the kids. So he actually sacrificed himself in order to get this guy away from the kids. But instead of shooting him, Awad pulled out a knife and stabbed him 8 times. not much else to say. Rabbi Shlomo lived and is receiving a lot of support. So far, Boston PD are investigating this just now as an attempted murder. They haven't filed, have determined whether or not they're going to file hate crime charges yet or not. I don't think they're going to have much trouble doing that, though, because there's been some history with Awad and former friends and roommates. So, got some quotes here. One of Awad's former friends at the University of South Florida, Eric Valiente, said that Awad was violent and anti-Semitic. Those are quotes. Quoting him again, he started becoming violent. He was very much anti-Semitic. He would say, like all types of Jewish jokes. I thought he was joking at first, and then I started to see seriousness in his comments. Aiden Anderson, a former roommate of Awad's, who is Jewish, told CBS Boston he had to move out and get a restraining order last fall when Awad attacked him in their shared kitchen. Prosecutors said on court Friday that Awad faces charges of battery and theft in Florida and had to be sent to a mental health facility. He has a clean record in Massachusetts. So according to the arrest record, when officers approached Awad, he pointed a gun at them. Then they drew their weapons, and he put it down. And then as he was being arrested, he kicked one of the officers in the stomach. And he has pleaded not guilty, of course, to assault and assault on an officer. So, this is good. So, for some reason, he was still legal here in the U.S. as of May. Middle May this year, he was still legal, even though, as I just said, he was wanted in Florida on charges of battery and theft. How is that possible? That is a very tragic story, JF. It is indeed. It has a happy ending, though. I have to point this out, though, specifically about Rabbi Noginsky. Let me quote this. It could be Noginsky. I'm not sure. I'm going to go with the hard G. Noginsky, a father of 12 who moved to Boston from Israel to serve the city's Russian-speaking Jewish community, was released from a local hospital on Thursday night after being treated for his injuries. So he left Israel to move to the U.S. to minister to a very specific community, Russian-speaking Jews in Boston. You wouldn't even think there'd be that much of a community in Boston. It turns out there's certainly enough of a one for them to have the need for a rabbi, and a place large enough to have 100 students or kids for a summer camp. But I have to point this out. I think Shlomo is the best name for a rabbi ever. I love that name. I love that name. I don't know if it's specific to a particular region, but I think that is the most awesome name for a rabbi. Shlomo Noginsky. You can't get better than that. But I don't know. That could be just a conceit on my part. I don't know. So we got a stabbing in Boston, but it wouldn't be a Monday without talking about the weekend death toll in Chicago. Makes all the major headlines, even though other cities have it just as bad. But I told you last week that it was going to be a hell of a weekend because this is July 4th weekend. I wasn't sure if the numbers weren't going to come out until tomorrow, seeing as how today's technically part of the holiday. Excuse me, but we do have numbers. And you can see here from this article from the Epoch Times by Jack Phillips. Chicago, over the weekend, more than 80 shot, 14 dead. And a number of children were shot as well. 2 people were killed and at least 4 were wounded, including a 12-year-old girl and a 13-year-old boy during a mass shooting at Washington Park in Chicago's South Side District early on Monday. Around the same time, in another South Side neighborhood, a shooting left a 6-year-old girl and a woman injured. Early Monday morning, 2 Chicago officers were shot while they attempted to disperse crowds in South Austin. Authorities told the Chicago Sun-Times that in all, 88 people were shot and 14 killed since Friday night. In one instance, a University of Chicago student was shot and died Sunday while riding on a Green Line train in Washington Park. Among the injured include a 6-year-old, a 5-year-old, a 12-year-old, all girls, and an 11-year-old boy. Some 32 people were shot on Thursday. So far in Chicago, 2021, there have been 1,892 shootings. That's a 12% increase year over year from year over year. About 330 homicides have been reported so far this year. Now, I remember back in the 80s. I'll get to that in a second, dog. Thank you. I remember back in the 80s that Chicago saw murder rates in the 900s. I believe one year they topped 1,000. And then the 94 crime bill kicked in, and that stuff stopped. But now we have George Soros-backed DAs who are soft on crime. They don't prosecute anyone who they feel is a disadvantaged person, be it race, social status, economic status, whatever. Unless they're white. Then the book gets thrown at them. It's the case. I'm sorry, that's the case of it. I'm not being racist. I'm being realistic. That's the way it is. Look, Chicago is about to see its own version of bail reform. Illinois is signing into law bail reform across the state. A third of Illinois sheriffs are leaving. They're either quitting right now or they're not going to run for re-election. Remember, sheriffs are elected positions. Sheriffs are the only law enforcement officers in your community who are directly answerable to the community. And they're leaving. A lot of Chicago and suburban police officers are bailing too. Part of the new laws that are being unveiled in Illinois are pulling away basically all qualified immunity for police officers, which means if you rough up a guy during a scuffle when they resist arrest and they break a finger, they could sue you for damages and you could lose your house. Who's going to want to be a police officer in that environment? No one. No one. Minneapolis just got hit with a not a consent decree, an injunction last week where they have to hire 330 more police officers because the department is so depleted right now between retirements, people outright quitting, and a number of officers who have declared themselves mentally unfit due to what's it called again? Traumatic stress disorder. Post-traumatic stress disorder. There it is. Yeah, PTSD. And where they kind of come from is the thing. You can sign a piece of paper saying, hey, you have to hire this many officers, but everyone in Minneapolis knows the city council hates cops. They said last year they were going to defund the entire police department. And crime in Minneapolis absolutely blew up. Carjackings are hundreds of % more than they ever used to be. Heck, carjackings didn't even used to be a thing in Minneapolis. Now they happen all the time. Shootings are massively up. Murders are massively up. Anytime there's a police-involved shooting, the place erupts in flames and looting. They've completely lost control of the city. So you can tell them you got to hire more officers, but who's gonna come? What idiot in their right mind wants to be a police officer in Minneapolis or Chicago or New York City or Los Angeles or Seattle or Portland or Austin or Atlanta or DC? Need I go on? The Democrats have made the atmosphere for police officers absolutely massively toxic. And they had the gall last week, including Jen Psaki, who, for those of you who may not remember, is the arrogant, condescending, dismissive, mendacious, passive-aggressive, patronizing, self-righteous, smug, lying White House press secretary, we were supposed to believe that Republicans are behind the defund the police movement simply because they did not vote for the porculus bill that included some money for police departments, but that money was not directed specifically towards officers. It could have been used even more for quote-unquote social workers. Remember, a lot of cities, Democrat cities, are saying they want to send social workers to welfare checks, to disturbed person calls. How many times have we covered events just on this show alone where an officer shows up to a welfare check and they're attacked and are almost killed and have to use lethal force to defend themselves or the people around them? Several. And those are just the ones we've covered. It happens over and over again. Reimagining policing means getting people killed, be it residents in the poor communities, in the high crime communities, or be it people who are trying to do the jobs of cops with no training beyond empathy. Remember, Chicago police can't foot chase anyone anymore unless they have express permission from their supervisor. And even then, it has to be basically a matter of life and death, or they can get sued. These are Democrat cities. And Chicago, black mayor, black DA, and it's the blacks who are dying. The aldermen in Chicago begged for a police plan before this weekend because they knew what the propensity for violence was going to be. Nothing. There was absolutely nothing. They were on their own. So as I teased at the beginning of the show, San Jose is on the verge of becoming the most gun-restrictive city in California, stepping ahead of LA and others by proposing 2 new ordinances. This is an article from the Epoch Times by Eileen Eng. And, let me interrupt myself. Electric Dog said in the D-Live chat earlier that Shlomo is Hebrew for Solomon. I did not know that. I did not know that. Thank you, Dog. That is perfect. That is perfect. JF says in the chat as well, it almost sounds like shalom. Yeah, that's true. That's true. I didn't put that together either. Thank you so much, Dog. That means a lot to me to know that. I really appreciate it. Even more of a reason why Shlomo is such a perfect name for a rabbi. So anyway, back to San Jose. These haven't been voted on yet to become law in San Jose, but there are 2 proposals that have moved forward through the city council, and one of them is to require San Jose gun owners to have liability insurance. Now, I recommend that gun owners have insurance, especially if you feel you're ever going to be in a position where you need to defend yourself. There are a lot of states out there that have very draconian laws regarding self-defense, especially in your home. New Jersey, for example. Technically, they're a castle doctrine state, but that's not true. What they really are is a what's the proper phrase? Basically required to retreat. Whereas you're in your home, and some guy with a knife breaks in through the front door. Unless you can't leave via another entrance, exit, window, whatever, safely, unless you have no choice, you cannot attack that person. You cannot defend yourself or your property if there's any way you can escape the property safely. Duty to retreat. Duty to retreat. And there are a number of states like that. Hell, Oklahoma. There was a guy some years ago who kept getting broken into his home. People kept breaking into his home. And he bought an AR-15. And 3 teenagers broke into the place. A couple of them, I believe, had guns. At least one of them did. And he shot them. And he was sued by the families because they only had a pistol and he had an AR-15. Therefore, his use of force was not proportional. Exactly the same argument that the Israeli haters used against the IDF and the Israeli Air Force for their taking out Hamas targets in Beirut during the rocket attacks. The thinking was, well, Hamas is only firing rockets, and the Iron Dome shoots down 90% of them. Meanwhile, Israel are dropping bombs, directly on Beirut and killing people. So, Israel's the bad guy. That's the exact same reasoning that was used against this guy in Oklahoma. He had an AR-15. He had the Iron Dome. They just had some rockets, and so he's at fault. I honestly don't remember how that case turned out. I know it went to court. I know it went to court, and that's Oklahoma. I have liability insurance in case I'm ever charged with defending myself and charged with a crime through the USCCA, the United States Concealed Carry Association. They have several levels of insurance for gun owners, and they also have an excellent training program. The resources you can get from the USCCA for various types of training, including medical training for emergency trauma medicine, are out of this world. I highly recommend it. Highly recommend it. But so not only is San Jose requiring you to have liability coverage, but they're also going to make San Jose residents pay a fee. Their thinking is that if they charge each gun owner a certain amount of money, it will defray the costs that San Jose incurs because of gun crime. So what San Jose is saying is, you have a gun legally. We know you have that gun legally because it's registered in the state of California. It has to be. If it's an AR-15. If it's a handgun, not. But we're going to require you to pay a fee because of the guys who are criminals, who carry guns illegally and use them illegally. So basically, we're going to force the taxpayers with guns to pay for the criminals' actions. Now, a couple things about this. First of all, the liability insurance, that may actually be upheld in court before it gets all the way up to SCOTUS. It may be upheld. That may be seen as a legitimate act by a government. I don't know if it's going to hold, but I do see that at least getting upheld, at least up to the Ninth Circuit. We'll see how it goes from there. But the fee, I don't see how that's going to fly. First of all, they don't know if you have a gun or not. If it's an AR-15, it's registered. But the handguns, they don't know anything about. At least I believe AR-15s are registered in California. I could be wrong there. I know you had to register your AK-47s after the San Ysidro shooting. They said, "Oh, you have to register it, but don't worry, we won't take it away." And then a little while later, they took them all away. AK-47s are illegal in California. They registered them, waited a little while, let the dust settle, and then they confiscated all of them. But since San Jose doesn't know who has and who doesn't have a gun, it's going to be hard for them to levy that fee. So are they going to create a registry in San Jose? Kind of iffy. Kind of iffy. And the other thing, the way the ordinance is written, is there's no direct bucket for that fee money to go to. It just says it's going to go to compensate taxpayers for gun-related incident costs. Doesn't say it's going to go to, say, the Gun Crime Bureau of San Jose PD, anything like that. Just it's going to be like a slush fund that this is going to be paid into. Now, again, these have not been signed into San Jose law yet. They're going through the city council at the moment. But I wanted to give you a heads up on it just in case it does come true later. I want to quote Electric Dog in the D-Life chat. It said, the pendulum will swing back, so don't be in the way when it happens. Thank you, Dog. Also quoting Twin Crier in the Trovo chat, having a gun is a right. There's no right to be a criminal. She says that's so backwards. I agree completely. And this is what we see over and over again by the Democrats. They want to make it harder for people who legally own firearms to do so, while making it easier for criminals who commit the crimes by doing such things as, say, not closing the southern border, through which are pouring thousands of guns a day. Thousands of unregistered guns a day. And they are going into the hands of criminals. Lickety-split. It is not straw man purchases that are the big purveyor, big supplier of illegal arms to citizens who are not legally able to carry or who have criminal backgrounds and seek to have a gun without going through a background check. Same thing. I just made my own argument. But they're coming over by the thousands every day. And to hear Biden tell it, to hear Lawyer Lightfoot tell it, to hear the other Democrats tell it, it's straw purchases, where people go into a gun store and buy a bunch of guns in their name and then sell them illegally to other people. That's called a straw man purchase. It's against the law. It's against federal law. That is not where the majority of illegal guns come from. It's a very small percentage of illegal sales or straw sales. Very small percentage. Almost all illegal guns are smuggled or stolen. That's another big component of guns used in crimes, or stolen guns. So by all means, folks, get a gun safe. Get a good gun safe. Even something that you can just lock is better than leaving it laying around loaded, ready to go. But they're not taking care of the problem at the source. They're just trying to make it harder for people who follow the law to follow the Second Amendment. Like with Biden's big pronouncement last week about how the ATF is going to crack down on gun stores. They're going to create more reporting requirements. They're going to go over their records with a fine-tooth comb. They're basically looking for penny-ante ways to shut down gun stores. That's what that whole thing is about. It's just shutting down gun stores for any little reason they can find. You know, a purchase wasn't reported in a timely manner, or someone got a gun because they lied on the form, and the store sold it to them without knowing they lied on the 4473. I'm sure they'll find a way to hang that on the store. There's the myriad of ways you can turn someone into a criminal. There was a book written some years ago, I think it was called 3 Felonies a Day, where it lists all of the little laws out there that you don't know, that you break every day, that could put you in prison as a felon, that you had no idea you were breaking. Hey, Laura. So nice to see you. So nice to see you. I'm glad you agree on Shlomo. Good. I'm glad that's correct. Thank you for putting that up there. I want to quote Twin Crier in the D-Live chat. This is a quote from Thomas Jefferson writing to George Washington. It is mortifying to suppose it is possible that a people, able and zealous to contend with their enemy, should be reduced to fold their arms for want of the means of defense. There it is. There it is. Beautifully put. Beautifully put. Thank you, Twin Crier. Thank you. By the way, quoting San Jose Mayor, while the Second Amendment protects the right to bear arms, it does not require taxpayers to subsidize gun ownership. So in other words, the San Jose Mayor is blaming legal gun owners for gun crime in San Jose. Beautiful. Just beautiful. Moving right along. This story has me tied up in knots. Let me give you the headline first. This is from the Epoch Times again by Tom Ozimek. Very simple. Allen West says he's running for governor of Texas in 2022. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar, Lieutenant Colonel Allen West, retired U.S. Army, has been in politics off and on for some years. He was a Florida U.S. congressman for a term, moved to Texas, stayed out of politics for a while. Then he ran and won to be the head of the Texas GOP. He stepped down last month because people were predicting, it turns out rightfully so, that he's going to run for governor as a Republican in 2022. He's going up against Abbott. No Democrats have filed yet. There's another Republican who's filed. Last name's Huffines. Very well-known name in certain parts of Texas because Huffines is a major auto dealer. They have outlets all over the Dallas Metroplex, all over. But Allen West is a brilliant, brilliant man. He is a real beautiful spokesperson for conservative values. Here's where I get tied up in knots. Trump has already backed Abbott to be the governor for a third term in Texas. Now, I know Trump and Abbott are very good friends, and I understand why. But Abbott really screwed the pooch when it came to running Texas during the pandemic. He locked everything down. You remember that famous story of the hairdresser in Dallas who was arrested and thrown in jail for just trying to feed her kids? She had no money, no savings. Her kids were going hungry, so she opened her store and she was thrown in jail. The Texas AG, Ken Paxton, had to intervene after a Dallas judge threw the book at her. That's the kind of stuff that was going on under Greg Abbott's governorship. There was also the instance where that Texas County Sheriff showed up at a church service with an MRAP. An MCAT, an armored vehicle, with a gunner in the turret behind a fully operable machine gun to arrest a pastor for having a church service indoors. That was Greg Abbott's Texas last year. And a lot of people remember that. And Texans have very, very, very long memories. And I'll tell you right now, if I'm a Texas resident come 2022, I would vote for Allen West over Greg Abbott in a heartbeat. So what I am trying to figure out is, how strong can Allen West run if Trump is backing Abbott? Now, if Trump backs off, if he just leaves the endorsement in place, but doesn't actively stump for Abbott, then I see Allen West as having a very strong chance of winning, at least forcing it into a runoff. Come primary. So we'll have to see. Huffines, I don't think, has much of a chance. He's not all that well known. His name is, he has that. But as far as, he's a state rep right now, I believe, a state senator. So he's not all that well known otherwise. But, yeah, so if Trump just holds back, doesn't stump for Abbott, doesn't have a lot of rallies, I can see West walking away with it. But we'll have to see how that works out. We'll have to see how that works out. Laura Weekly says in the DLAC chat, Abbott has been a flip-flopper. Oh, absolutely. 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 Okay, so doing a little COVID news today, just one. Pictured here in this article, justthenews.com by Daniel Payne. This is a picture of Peter Daszak. You know Daszak, he's the CEO of EcoHealth Alliance, the company that's been implicated in sending lots and lots and lots of taxpayer dollars to the Wuhan Institute of Virology for gain-of-function research. All the documentation is there. There's no denying it. There's no denying it. And Fauci knew the whole time. Fauci fought to let that funding continue to go through, even after Trump directly said, stop it. So, but Peter Daszak's been the brains behind the money. He is one of the few American members of the WHO. He was handpicked by the Chinese to be part of the WHO delegation that went there, was it a month and a half ago, for the quote-unquote investigation into the origins of the virus. The results of which were that the lab leak theory was highly improbable, and that all signs pointed to a zoonotic origin. That WHO report, one where they specifically said they saw no hard data from the Chinese at all. They were just told things. They didn't see any actual records, not even a PowerPoint presentation. They were just told stuff. Basically told, write this down and leave. That was the WHO investigation. America had an investigation ongoing, and Biden shut it down. And then he got found out. And then he ordered an IC investigation, gave them 90 days to come up with a report. 90 days! I remember when Biden was on the campaign trail screaming up and down that this is all Trump's fault. The entire pandemic was Trump's fault, partly because he never got a CDC team on the ground in Wuhan immediately. And that Biden would have done that. I would have a CDC team on the ground right now. He said that over and over again. Has he said that once since he, quote unquote, took office on January 20th? Once? No, not once. So far from what we've been told, he hasn't even mentioned the virus to Xi Jinping once. Not once. So Congress, specifically Republicans in Congress, want Daszak to appear in front of a subcommittee. They have asked for all his documentation, basically between EcoHealth Alliance, the CDC, and the WIV. And he hasn't turned over a letter. Hasn't turned over a period yet. And the Republicans are demanding that he come up with this. The letter went out in mid-April. Well, here's the thing. The Republicans don't have subpoena power on the committee specific to this investigation. The Commerce Committee. The Democrats run the House, so they run the committees. That's the way it works. And the Democrats are the only ones who can issue the subpoenas, being heads of the committees. And they refuse to subpoena Daszak. What the hell? I thought this was all Trump's fault. Some of this money went there under Trump. So why not get to the bottom of it? Why not? What could be the possible reason to not get into why and how Peter Daszak, through his organization, funded gain-of-function research and possibly created the virus that killed 3 million people worldwide and over 600,000 Americans? Electric Doug says in the D-Live chat regarding the Texas race, it's the primary. If West beats Abbott, Trump backs West all around. No biggie. That's a very good point, Doug. Very good point. It's a very, very, very good point. That would be the perfect solution. Thank you, Doug. Thank you. Okay, so one more article, and then I'll have the Babylon Bee bookend, and then for the hot fudge on top of the Monday Show Sunday. See what I did there? Monday Show Sunday. I will be playing a video from back in March from Sky News Australia that absolutely rips into Biden and, if I'm not mistaken, American media for completely ignoring his obvious problems, both mentally and in judgment. I played the video at the beginning of the show with Biden having to refer to notes just to be able to say, I released all available resources, government resources, to them in case this is a Russian attack. He had to go to a note card just to say that. But it's a long piece, and I don't want everyone to have to stick around just in case they've got better things to do. So I'll do the Babylon Bee piece, and then I'll play the video. And if you need to leave, that's great. It will be here, of course. I'm still doing the show on YouTube today. It's the whole show's on YouTube today, and I will upload not only the first half or the first part of today's show to Gab TV, but I'll do a separate upload of the video to Gab TV. So it'll be there for you as well. And it's on YouTube. You can go to Sky News Australia on YouTube. I highly suggest you subscribe, by the way. They do great work. So let's move along. So this is scary stuff here. Now, this is an article from the U.S. Sun. I did not know the Sun tabloid had a U.S. outlet, but it does. And this article is scary. It's not unique, but it's scary. This is something from a couple days ago. Chinese state media basically explained the three-part plan to invade Taiwan. Pardon me, Taiwan. I don't know why I said Taiwan. Invade Taiwan. And this is not, Armed Forces Daily. This is state-run Chinese media, which means it doesn't go out unless the party says it can. So, here it is in a nutshell. Stage 1. Key installations attacked. DF-16 short-range ballistic missile attacks will pulverize airports, early warning radar, anti-air missile bases, and command centers across the island. You can see here, it specifically lists the Taiwan International Airport there on the far northwest coast. Early warning radar right there off the coast, the west coast, and then the Tong Sao Naval Base, which is on the far east coast of Taiwan. Remember, Taiwan is basically mountainous across 3/5 of its land. Only the western portion is flat. Most of the rest of it is very high and high terrain. That naval base is the only low spot in all of the east side of Taiwan. So all of its major installations are facing China. Okay, so stage 2. Cruise missile strikes. YJ-91 and CJ-10 cruise missiles would be unleashed from land, warships, and submarines, striking military bases, ammunition depots, communications infrastructure, and key road junctions. And then stage 3, warship bombardment. Remaining obstacles destroyed to pave way for amphibious beach landings. And then here you can see a picture right here of Chinese amphibious craft that would be used for beach landings to put personnel and vehicles on the ground in Taiwan. Here's a picture of one of the short-range ballistic missiles, the DF-16. See there, it's in a mobile launcher. Thing with mobile launchers is they can move around. So it's very difficult to advance target these systems because they shoot and move. That's a lot of ICBM systems are now shoot and move. Here's a YJ-91 cruise missile. And then here's a heavy Chinese bomber, the H-6, based on a Soviet bomber, the Ilyushin 76, I can't remember the name of it now, the Ilyushin bomber. It's basically a direct copy. You can see there it's got heavy. I'm not sure if those are fuel tanks or bombs on the wings. Actually, I can't say. I'm not really sure. I don't want to speculate. And then here's a Chinese destroyer with some amphibious craft in the water. Now, the one thing I don't know is China's amphibious capability. I've heard some people say it's not very strong, that they do not have enough amphibious landing craft to put a lot of people on the shore quickly. Also, amphibious landing craft are wide open to missile and artillery strikes. So it would depend on how much of the Taiwanese coastal batteries are alive after the initial bombardments to protect the coast. Now, of course, if China does start a shooting war with Taiwan, then South Korea, Japan, and Australia are going to be pulled in immediately. There's just no two ways about it. There are mutual defense pacts between those countries there in the Pacific Rim. So this is scary stuff. Now, China has put this out before. A couple years ago, they put out something similar. And they didn't invade then. But still, they're saying this is what we want to do. Now, Electric Dog says China has a lot more boast than bite. That is true. That is true. But the thing is, China's Air Force would overwhelm Taiwan immediately. Taiwan has too small of an Air Force, and Japan, South Korea, and Australia are too far away to interdict quickly. So China could achieve air superiority very quickly. And then it would be a matter of time. The big thing would be a naval blockade. If South Korea, South Korea, Japan, and Australia, along with the U.S. Western Pacific Fleet, could create a naval blockade, then it would be impossible for China to resupply anyone on Taiwan. And then it would become a ground war. That would be the tricky part. But as we talked about before, it's pretty obvious that if Taiwan is not invaded and overrun quickly, if it becomes a slog, then Xi Jinping, if he's the one who's in power when the invasion is launched, will be kicked out immediately. There are a number of knives already pointed at his back. Because remember, in communist systems, you got a strong man, and there's always a few people waiting to take over by any means necessary. They just need the right opportunity. And normally you have those guys killed ahead of time. But Xi Jinping doesn't have that opportunity at the moment. So this could be really an interesting move all around. Justifiable Freedom says the East originated the mobile land-based launch systems. That's right. That's right. That's true. That is true. Good call, JF. All right, so our final Babylon Bee bookend, and then we'll get to the video. I'm probably going to get kicked off YouTube for saying this, but what the hell? This is from their U.S. section. Democrat baker sued for refusing to write Trump won message on cake. And here we have a totally aggravated millennial baker with the cake in question. Dateline Birmingham, Alabama. A new front has opened in the cake wars, this time the owner of Do Better Bakery coming under fire for refusing to bake a Trump-themed cake for a local man, Bo Nelson. Quoting Mr. Nelson, "All I wanted was to have a Trump-themed birthday. We had it all set, pinned the crack pipe on Hunter, a Mike Pence piñata. Then the baker throws a fit about writing Trump 1 on a cake. Said he refused to, quote, spread the yeast of insurrection, close quote. Is this knucklehead using yeast in cakes?" Close quote. The owner of the bakery, Mr. Oliver Bennett, has steadfastly refused to back down. Quote, "We here at the Do Better Bakery exist to support diversity, equity, and inclusion. It's why I've moved to only using black flour, baking bread that identifies as cake, and occasionally firing myself out of guilt. And this guy wants me to bless the big lie with cake? I'd rather take this mask off, catch COVID, not take hydroxychloroquine, and die." Close quote. Attorney General Merrick Garland, his schedule cleared after recently being smacked down by the Supreme Court, took time to weigh in on the case. Quote, "It's such a terrible violation of rights to be asked to write a lie with delicious frosting. A business should always have the right to refuse a customer asking them to violate their own conscience. To be clear, that's totally different from the Masterpiece Cake Shop guy being asked to violate his conscience. Why? Because I say so." "Oh man, this job is the best." Close quote. According to sources, Mr. Nelson did consider going to the MAGA bakery to get his cake, but it was all the way across the street, and he thought it would be more fun to trigger a liberal snowflake baker, and that's in quotes. Babylon Bee, everyone. All right, so as I promised, little over 7.5 minutes long, but I think it's worth your time. This is a piece from Sky News Australia, an opinion piece by Corey Bernardi. And as I was saying at the beginning of the show, Sky News used to be the Australian CNN. It was everywhere. Airports, metro stations. And then it started getting a little too conservative for the Liberal government in Australia, and so they yanked it from everywhere. But it's been gaining strength. I played a piece a few weeks ago from some Sky News, a panel discussing the absolute failings and flailings of our current president, honk honk. But this piece is really something special. It's all the way from the end of March, but it's still really good. So obviously there's some pieces that we've seen since then that bolster this person's argument even more. And as I teased at the beginning, there's a commercial from last year's political season that I had never seen before. It's called Weekend at Biden's, and it is hilarious, absolutely hilarious. So please check this out.
But first tonight, do you remember back in the good old days, 2007, the golden era of politics, the self-serving claims that John Howard was too old to be Prime Minister? At the time, he was a sprightly and very energetic 66-year-old, and he had nearly a dozen years' experience as the best Prime Minister in my lifetime at least. And that narrative, that he was too old, was pushed by a bunch of media outlets, it was pushed by the Labor Party and a few lefties within the Liberal Party who didn't want Howard to be the leader anymore. Now today, John Howard is 81, and he could still run intellectual rings around many of the current crop of political leaders, both here and abroad. Unfortunately, we can't say the same for the United States political administration, which is starting to resemble the movie Weekend at Bernie's. You may recall that film involved a couple of losers pretending their dead boss was actually still alive so that they could enjoy his beach house and his enormously extravagant lifestyle for the whole weekend. So now we have the Weekend at Biden's.
This fall, get ready for a presidential candidate unlike any other.
I think we're good.
Weekend at Biden.
This is the reality show where the Democrats put up a barely cogent candidate for president just so that they could enjoy the spoils of office for 4 years. And of course it features an all-star cast of the politically semi-lucid, headlined by Joe Biden himself. but he's ably supported, I have to say, by crazy Nancy Pelosi and the hapless Chuck Schumer. The character of the manipulating, unlovable loser belongs to the cackling Kamala Harris.
Okay, I'll go.
Stage, but
Yeah.
Now, as befits the Democrats, the plot is pretty simple. A trio of near octogenarians, oh, that reminds me, happy 80th birthday today, Nancy Pelosi. They seize control of the most powerful nation in the world while not having any idea what they're doing. All the while, their radical understudy plots to seize power for herself. It's incredible, huh? Now, the star of the show, Joe Biden, walks and talks. But the walking is a bit worrying, while the talking is often total gibberish.
On politics, like prevailing and look, I guess I'm taking too much time. Play the radio. Make sure the television. Make sure you have the record player on at night. The phone. Make sure the kids hear words. If it holds near and dear to you that you like to be able to. Anyway, we're going to get a lot done.
In a strange twist, this main star has to ask his carer/wife where he is when he wakes up most mornings.
I get up in the morning, look at Jill and say, where the hell are we?
And of course, that's not the only question arising from this true-to-life mockumentary. The audience are left spellbound and asking how Biden, after spending his entire adult life in Congress earning the inflation-adjusted equivalent of just $200,000 per year, came to own multiple houses and accrue enormous family wealth. Now, whatever canny investing Biden did to afford a lifestyle where his family can afford to abandon laptops in repair shops and enjoy regular jaunts to China and the Ukraine, it seems to be contagious. Because his sidekick, Crazy Nancy, uses her substantial wealth to hoard ice cream in a $24,000 freezer.
This is something you can get through the mail. Other people in our family go for some other flavors, but chocolate, and then we have some other chocolate here.
Unfortunately, Nancy's ice cream prepping fetish induces a form of weekend post-binge brain freeze from which she seems unable to escape.
Out of your quiver, you're not ruling anything out.
Good morning, Sunday morning. We have a responsibility. We take an oath to protect and defend the Constitution.
Of course, there are three characters in this performance, and the third is Chucky Schumer, who, fortunately for us, is relegated to a bit part because he let people know that there's a bit more than mere politics on his mind.
There will be a trial, and when that trial ends, senators will have to decide if they believe Donald John Trump incited the insurrection.
It's meant to be rated PG after all. But anyway, behind this lackluster trio is cackling Kamala, who seemingly can only laugh hysterically at any question actually directed her way. Now, of course, that makes her the most lucid character in the entire script.
It's unclear when the president or vice president will take a trip south.
not today.
Not funny to border state senators.
That is not compassionate. That is not giving a damn.
Now, given the cast, the plot of Weekend at Biden's makes them all too predictable twists and turns. Children are kept in cages, unarmed invaders flood into the United States, while trillions of dollars in printed money is dropped from helicopters and fuels price rises in fuel, foodstuffs and other necessities. And despite the chaos whirling around him, Biden's minders tell him to call a lid on his weekend, and he does. But he decides to let his playmates and their friends do whatever they want with all the resources available to Mr. Biden himself. And so his friends decide to rename the Biden administration the Biden-Harris administration. They decide to allow males to compete in female sports, while arguing in public that removing dead people from electoral rolls is actually voter suppression. And empowered Kamala even enlists the help of Bill Clinton to host a forum on empowering women. I mean, who better to help fight for women's rights than the serial female empowerer of women himself? Now, there's no word on whether this is to be held on Bill's regular Caribbean retreat, Little St James, now that former owner Jeffrey Epstein cannot provide free flights and accommodation. Well, we're only a few episodes into this 4-year premiere season of Weekend at Biden's, but already the audience seems to be losing interest. A recent public appearance by key cast members could draw only a couple of dozen fans, which suggests that the decision to replace the previous political programming will actually be regretted by tens of millions of Americans. Unfortunately for all of us watching, it's easy to see how this is all going to end.
Twice as effective as minoxidil.
There you have it, folks. I believe that's it. Let me make sure that was the end of it. I wasn't able to play it all the way through before. Yep, that's the end of it. All right. We have reached the end of our programming day. I expected today to be short, since it again was a slow news day, being slow news weekend, being the 4th of July weekend. Didn't have as much economic news to support, but that I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. I like that guy a lot. His name again is Cory Bernardi, C-O-R-Y, Cory Bernardi, on Sky News Australia. They have a YouTube channel, almost 1.8 million subscribers, so do check them out. It's very much worthwhile. I have a feeling I'll be using them a little more often as time moves along. But that guy, definitely the prototype of the dry Australian wit, not the wacky Paul Hogan stuff, but the dry Australian wit, and very, gotta admit, real handsome guy too. Looks like an Australian footballer. Really good looking guy. But we will leave it at that. So tomorrow morning, of course, starting at 8 a.m. Eastern, we will continue with the Far Cry 5 playthrough. I've still got a bunch of collectibles to find, and a lot of fishing to do. So we're gonna be doing some of that together, because I don't have enough time during the day to take care of all that on my own, and put off finishing the game, because we've only got one real thing left to do after we take out a couple more cult outposts, and that is to fight Joseph Seed at the end main battle. So Joseph's the only one left, Ray. We killed John Seed, Faith Seed, and Jacob Seed. So now we've got the boss of the bosses, Joseph Seed, left. So I'll have to have a lot of stuff to knock down before I do that. Otherwise, I'll finish the game early, and I don't want to miss the other opportunities that I have, including fishing for some records. I've got to do that, and I did finish the baseball card minigame today, but I still have the records and the whiskey barrels, and I'll do some of that tonight. But a lot of that we'll be doing tomorrow. I think I also have some wolf beacons left to destroy too. I got 2 today. I think there's a couple more that wasn't given to me. Perhaps there's an area we haven't visited yet where that mission is handed out. And then, of course, tomorrow, 4 p.m. Eastern, we'll be back for the News Rodeo, having a lot of fun there. So, good folks, until the meantime, be well, God bless. Happy trails. Remember, you Gab TV, folks. No, never mind. That, I already talked about that. Okay, folks, I'll see you later. Bye-bye. Oh, no learning curve on the way out, by the way. I forgot to fix it. I don't want to bother you guys with that echo still. I'll try to get to that, but I just completely forgot until just now. So it's going to be a cold out today. All right, bye-bye.